So today we're talking about white balance and why that is so important to get right in the camera from the start. Yeah, don't mind me, I'm just watering my plants. So I like ferns and all tropical plants. So what is white balance and why is that important? I don't understand it. That's a lot of questions that I get. Well, white balance determines how accurate your colors are. Plain and simple. That's it. All right, video's over. Thank you so much for watching. I'm just kidding. White balance is important as a photographer or a videographer, and for that matter, because if you are trying to replicate what you have seen, why not get it right? Why not replicate the reds the way you wanted those reds to be, or the way you saw them as you were shooting it? Look, this camera right here, this is just a tool. This is just a medium between your brain and the tangible world out there, because you're using that camera to replicate what you've already pre-composed, envisioned in your mind. Your brain and your eyes are your camera. This is just a tool. Don't forget that. So we take that, put it into the camera, and we want to replicate that and make that tangible for the world to see. That's what photography is, right? For you, for me, we want to share our images with people. So if you're out there taking a beautiful picture of a sunset, would you want it to look blue, or would you want it to be those bright reds and oranges and yellows and all that fascinating stuff, purples, pinks, sometimes, that makes it such a wow-gasm? It's important to get white balance, correct. And I'm gonna show you how to do it. So first I wanna explain a little bit about light and how it's measured and what kind of a scale they use. This thing right here, that is your Kelvin scale. That is how they measure light. Right smack dab in the middle is 55K, 55 Kelvin. That is supposedly neutral white light, right? 12 o'clock noon. You know, the tumbleweeds and all that. So anything above that is going to be on the cooler side. Anything below that, like 33 to 2200, is more on your warmer side. So basically all the different colors of light will create different temperature hues or colors in your image or your film. And that's why it's so important to get that correct in camera, because you're not always going to get it right in post. And I'll explain that real quick. A lot of cameras, unless you're shooting on like an Arri Alexa or something that's super expensive and has a lot of raw capacity, most cameras like DSLRs, if you're shooting video, you're not going to be able to get that information back, because your camera's going to automatically kind of post-process whatever it's shooting, and it's going to get what it's thinking is the right color, and the rest of that information is going to be ejected out, and you're not going to have it. So when you go back into post-production and try to correct it, you may get it all right, but it's not going to be as accurate as it would have been if you had used one of these. So why do I have to use a white balance card? You know, why can't I just use auto white balance or the presets that most of these DSLRs come with? Well, presets are, in my opinion, are garbage. Okay, they're just a guessing game. You don't know how much sunshine it's been set for. You don't know how much shade it's been set for. In my opinion, I don't use them. I think they're garbage. So auto white balance is great. It's good for running gun stuff, and it is accurate most times, but it is not as accurate as using one of these. The reason is because your camera can get fooled. But I will say this, digital cameras have been out for quite a while, and through the years, the technology has advanced tremendously. I mean, let's face it, even cell phones now are very incredible and very accurate with their color representation. However, I would not trust that wholeheartedly, and that is because cameras are still mechanical and they still get fooled. Your brain and your eye are far advanced than cameras can ever be. Well, maybe some people. So for example, let's just say you're shooting an object, a large object of a certain color, like a red or a blue or a green, for instance. Whatever that color is, your camera is going to look at that and determine and auto-calibrate itself accordingly. And you may have a bright red object that may tend to look a little more purple or a little more orange, because your camera's trying to auto white balance itself using auto white balance. It doesn't always work, but if you use one of these guys, you know that the red that you shot is going to be the red that you're seeing with your naked eye. Everybody sees colors a little bit differently, and so does your camera. So make sure you're telling your camera what you're seeing and how to see it. That is why you use a white balance card. Now, how do you do it? Let me show you. So we're going to use my house as an example. I've got wood paneling all throughout, so that makes everything very, very warm, as you can tell, right? And in order to get the white balance correct, I've got to use one of these, a white balance card. I'll hold that in front of the camera just like that and snap a picture. We're not worried too much about the focus of it, so that is the image that I got. Sorry for the shaky camera. And then what we'll do is we'll go into menu settings, custom white balance, and set it. And hit OK. And there you go. So let's look at our image. We're going to go back in here to the settings. We're set on custom white balance, which is what we just set our camera to by taking that photo. Let's go over here to auto white balance and see if it changed at all. It might be very small, but let's just see. Yep. I don't know if you saw that or not. Let me do it again. Sorry for the shaky camera, but this is kind of hard to do with just two hands. All right, so once again, custom white balance. You can see it got a little bit more warm. Auto white balance. You can see how it changed a little bit, became a little more blue. And as you can see, auto white balance does work, okay, but it's not as accurate as you think, and it can get fooled. Our auto white balance turned it a little more blue, a little cooler than with our custom white balance that was more accurate. So that's why I don't really use auto white balance unless I'm in a run and gun situation, and I sure as heck don't use the presets because I just me. You might get away with it. I don't trust them. I rather use my white balance card and my eyes. That way I'm getting the most accurate colors that I can possibly get to represent in my photograph and in the films that I make the way I wanted them to look as far as color goes. So one more thing I want to go over real quick that will help you in this is, as you remember, we went over the Kelvin scale, right? Right in the middle, 5500K. That was neutral white light, broad daylight, high noon is what they typically read that as. Anything above it is very cold. Anything below that starts to get really warm. If you've ever fooled with your Kelvin side of adjustments in white balance, not the automatic or not the custom or not the presets, but the little K symbol, or maybe on your camera it's PRE. If you go in there and you manipulate those individual Kelvin numbers, because you can go all the way up and all the way down, you'll notice that things are backwards. Like when you go to 2200 Kelvin, things get very blue. And you're thinking, well, wait a minute, you just said the Kelvin scale on that end gets very warm. Well, what you're doing is you're telling your camera that, hey, the environment that I'm in is very, very warm, so I need you to neutralize this situation. So what it's doing is it's slowly making things bluer to try to neutralize it into the normal white light. That's why it gets colder on your camera when you change that versus staying warm. So don't get fooled and don't get confused with that. Same thing if you go on the opposite end. As you get up into the cooler region of 8000K, your camera's going to replicate that and make your image warmer, because it's trying to neutralize that and make it white. With that being said, that's going to end today's video. I hope you have learned something today. Practice, practice, practice white balance. I can't explain how important it is. Use these cards. It takes like 5 seconds to do. It's not a big deal. You'll be thanking yourself later. Maybe you'll even thank me. I don't know. There are other videos out there that may explain this a little bit better. I hope that I explained it good for you. And if I did, and that has won your subscription, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so you'll know when I post again. And I will see you when I come back. Are you picking a booger?
The big one.
Gross.